Go ahead.
Okay, so that was really great. I found your presentation really intense, and I feel like I would need to listen to it again to understand.
Oh, there's a method to do that.
Oh, awesome.
These are all these talks are going to be posted.
They'll all be on YouTube and they'll be linked up with our Facebook page within the next few
You
days.
have your own YouTube
Yeah.
page, because I'm
Yeah.
not on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So I have a question. So I started donating money to the UNHCR, and I felt like this was the right thing to do. And I felt like the person on the phone was very informative, but I also felt guilt. And I'm not sure if, I don't know like too much about the UNHCR, but like, are they a legit organization? Okay. And are they doing good work? Like, is it ethical?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the UNHCR, the volunteers and the organizations have different capacities. And the UNHCR is doing a good job in its capacity. It's providing blankets, it provides meals, it provides giant, it provides shacks. And $10 can buy a blanket. Okay, they do pay some of their staff, but
They have to.
NGOs are just that way.
Yeah.
So, like, there's just some reality on the ground that you have to deal with, and just, you know, but they're
But
good.
it's being properly
Mhm.
dispersed.
I think the UNHCR is doing a really good job there, overall.
And you saw it too, right?
They're sending the buses, they're doing blankets.
Sweet. Awesome.
You go ahead. Pick.
Okay, please.
Thank you. So my question is for the first speaker. I'm sorry, there's a forget your name, Dr.
Gala.
Dr. Gala. You spoke of poverty and occupation as one of the reasons for ISIS's creation, or Daesh or ISIL, and then the disenfranchisement of the Sunni population in Iraq. I've heard hedges speak of death squads, so I will believe it. This paints ISIS as a reactive organization. So why are ISIS attacks global? Why did we see ISIS attacks in Nigeria, Mali, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Europe, if it's located in Iraq? And why is the capital of ISIS in Raqqa, Syria? The second question is, wouldn't it be more feasible, a type of Occam's razor, more straightforward, if we were to see ISIS's policy as developing on a historical anti-Shia policy, a set of anti-Shia policies, whether we look at it as human rights calls it, but in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, apartheid, genocide against the Hazara Shia in Afghanistan, programs against the Shia in Pakistan, complete disenfranchisement before the Assad government in Syria, complete disenfranchisement before the Amal Party as well as Hezbollah in Lebanon, numerous fatwas against the Shia in Egypt, outright massacres of thousands in the last few years of Shia in Nigeria. So why would we attribute the creation of ISIS to an isolated point when there is a plethora of historical evidence as well as contemporary evidence indicating a normative structure that demonizes and literally hunts down Shia populations, even in Belgium 2012, the firebombing of the Shia mosques, as well as in 2004, 2005, the Muslim Students Association of the University of Alberta precluded the possibility of having a Shia president, because a Shia president with an MSA here at this university would go against their normative structure. This is Canada. And finally, why aren't Shia, who are a historically and globally persecuted and genocided population, not for the last 100 years, mind you, for the last 1,400 years, why haven't they created a global anti-Sunni alliance? That's a big question. If ISIS was able to do it in Iraq for less than 10 years of Maliki's government, why did the Shia not do it for over 10 years of Saddam Hussein's gassing and genocide, hangings, dismemberment, and that's just Iraq, and that's just Saddam. So the question then is this, and I love your scholarship, I'm not saying anything, it's a good question though. Is ISIS really a reaction? Or is ISIS the logical conclusion of a 1,400-year-old history of normative and systematic violence against the Shia population? Thank you.
Well, too many questions, actually. Well, I mean, the worst thing that we could look at this conflict to describe it as a religious conflict. This is going to be a disaster in the Middle East, particularly between Sunnah and Shia. I mean, if I would ask the question here,
We hear you, we
Yeah.
can't hear you.
I would say that if we want to reduce this conflict and look at it as really a religious conflict, this means a destruction to the Middle East. And this is what we have been hearing in the past 20 decades. I wouldn't say I would bet any of you, but did you hear about Shia and Sunnah, let's say, these problems 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, as we are now, presented, as this war is a sectarian conflict between Muslims themselves, between Shia and Sunni, but this is not fact. This is not to deny that there is lots of repression and human rights abuses in all Arab world. This is why when I quoted that thing saying ISIS is actually a production of, yes, the intervention military in the Middle East, but as well as these repression and this, human rights abuses about this Saudi Arabia Salafi extremist doctrine that looks, this is the only Islam that we accept. And again, we have not, to ignore, when Shia were persecuted in Iraq, America said nothing about that. Actually, when the war between Iraq and Iran erupted for 10 decades, who fueled that? Who paid the money for that? And even including Saudi Arabia. Now it is, the enemy of Saddam Hussein at that time, and it was the friend of Saddam Hussein at that time against the Iran. So if you look to this whip, imperialism, dictatorship regime, Saudi Salafist doctrine, lack of education, I would say, even misinterpretation of Islam, that we do not have these scholars to come forward and say, no, this is not the right Islam. We have to apply this and that. So yeah, I do see your point when you are saying they are persecuted. But look also to the Sunnah. The Shia represent the majority in Iraq, as well as in Bahrain. And there is a large community in Turkey, as well as in Syria. And I would say to some point, particularly if the West sometimes, I keep saying that the military intervention or the Western intervention in the past 3 years, when Saudi Arabia crushed the Shia revolution in Bahrain, did we hear about that? So you see, again, it's the lenses. Where are we going to focus? What is going to make the news in our screens? So again, I will get back to my point, saying the worst thing to make is this conflict in the Middle East as a religious one. It is a political one. It is about the human rights. It is about abuses. And again, it is, of course, lots of factors to deal with this aspect. I focused in my presentation about military intervention, but as I said, there are many, many, many factors that we need to focus, not less important than the American intervention, and against related to Islam, to education, to poverty, to the lack of distribution between this wealth. But again, if we look at the internal problem, we're actually not looking to the bigger picture. There is a micro and macro level when you look at things. Because if we now misjudge the conflict in Syria and say it's internal conflict, it's ISIS, it's Sunnah and Shia, we're making a big mistake. Despite it is a strong internal conflict, religious conflict, the bigger one we have to focus on, a strong element, is the intervention from the outside.
Okay, I'm going to, did you have a response?
Yeah,
That,
quick point on this. During the British occupation of India, the British commander wrote explaining, how it is that the British, with a small force, managed to dominate India. And he explained that the British had long experience with using sectarian, with generating and using, and then using the sectarian divisions and violence which they had generated to control populations and to and to use this to exercise their domination. And he explained that they had learned how to do this in Ireland, and they've been doing it ever since. That the Americans aren't quite as skilled as the British were, but I think that it's really important to not to underestimate the actual creation of sectarian violence, you know, by the imperialist powers in order to pursue their objectives.
I'd like to invite, you were up for quite a while.
Thank you, thank you. I have a question that is practical nature. We are gathered here to both criticize and praise the Canadian government. What I'm wondering is, out of that 8,000 or so refugees that came to Canada as of December 31st, how many of them were or have been government sponsored?
Very
And
fair.
secondly, the comment to Ms. Morton, your references to Kosovo and Yugoslavia have been painted over with a heavy ideological brush, and I would suggest that you consult the facts before blaming the great whole country on any particular set of foreign policy objectives by any government outside of the Balkans. And I say this as a specialist on the region's history and politics. It's not fair to say that, because it is not true. Thank you.
I would make a short comment. Maryland Central Committee was one of the first private sponsors. Maryland Central Committee was one of the first private sponsorship agreement holders to bring people here. And our people are coming faster all the time. And I mean, it's both good and bad. That to up the numbers so they could kind of keep their promises, they speeded up the ones that private sponsors have been bringing. And we expect the government numbers will go higher once we get to February, March. That's kind of what we're being told in our organization. And, you know, we're glad that the people we were expecting to come are getting out of danger faster than they were before. So we're thankful for that. But they are using all the citizens of Canada, their hard work, to make their numbers look better.
Well, absolutely. We are just wondering what numbers what the actual numbers are. Or refugees sponsored by the government.
I can answer that.
Government supported 25,000.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
About 8,000 or 7,000 or so. Yeah, I think as of this week or something like that.
Yeah, and as moderator, I'll jump into it. That's a correct statistic. 7 or 8,000 as of today, but almost all of them are part of either private sponsorship or what's called. So the full government-sponsored refugee is supposed to, according to the revised new Liberal government statistic, start arriving, as she said, in February, January, February, March. They didn't meet their 25,000 by end of year at all.
Yeah. They said like it's gonna be like 10,000, and then the other 15,000 till March. Well, but nothing. I mean, we do not have formal number about that.
So, maybe ask the woman.
Oh yeah, maybe the woman over there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I am wondering how the Syrian living in Syria themselves, who have not left as refugees yet, are doing. I just heard on CBC radio right now that the Syrians living in Syria are in a worse situation than those that have left. So much attention has gone to the refugees, and rightly so. I mean, they are in need. But the people in Syria are in worse conditions. Not only do they have not any food, but they're also unsafe. Do you know of any good organizations, reliable organizations that is collecting money? Because the last time I heard was that there was a fundraiser, but the money ended up in the hands of ISIS, unfortunately. So do we know of any reliable Canadian organizations that we can send money to for the people in Syria themselves?
I don't know any. Sorry.
No, there is.
Can anyone answer?
I don't know, we do send some money there. I haven't heard it flood into ISIS, but I don't know.
In one situation, that is what has happened.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean every single situation, obviously, but because of that, I'm a little wary.
Oh, well, first, I think there is the Islamic Relief here in Canada. The second thing, there is the UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestine Refugees. It also takes some money for refugees in Syria and outside Syria. But your question actually geared about those, in Syria we have 23 million people. The war already displaced half of them out of the country. And United Nations at the moment are helping. This is at least what I heard in the news. So any of United Nations organizations, Save the Children, UNRWA, Islamic Relief in Canada, here are some of the names. And if we could, change addresses, I could look into that and send you more, let's say, information, accurate ones. Yeah, let's have a question over there from the gentleman here.
My question is two questions. First of all, under Harper government, USA abstained on vote on Palestine, but under Harper government, Canada was one of the worst countries when it came to Palestine.
Can you stand up so your voice?
Canada was one of the worst countries when it came to Palestine. When USA abstained, voting against the principle of recognizing Palestine, Harper government voted against. And yet, USA abstained. So it's our governments. We have to see what they are doing. Sometimes Canada has acted worse than USA when it comes to Palestine. My second question is, we keep saying it's Sunni Shia, but my principle is it's not Sunni Shia. It's more like Sunni Shias get along well, but it's more like Wahhabi,
Yes, sure.
and which is sect of Sunnis who are creating and sponsoring the terrorism, sponsoring the ISIS and all such things. But the war in Syria, is it really a war of unstable government? I don't think so. Syrian war was based on Iraq, Iran, Russia building a pipeline for the gas, all the way to Russian border. The Americans did not favor that. So it was the USA government and British government who got into it. And they have already admitted that Taliban was their creation. Wait for next 20 years and you will see that ISI is their creation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And actually, on the Palestinian issue, you are absolutely right. I mean, we had the worst government ever. And I would invite all of you to get the book that has been released today. Dr. Abu Laban has tackled this issue in the academic and expert part of that, speaking directly to the point you are making. So thank you for making it. And the second thing about the Saudi Salafi doctrine that is really a force of destruction, not only to the Saudi society, but all the Muslim in general. And unfortunately, I mean, this is what puzzles everyone. Those are the biggest ally for America, who speaks about human rights. 47 people have been beheaded in Saudi Arabia last week in one day. So yes, the danger comes, as I said, yes, I focus on the military intervention in the Middle East and its relation to what is happening now in the rise of ISIS, but there is lots of problems amongst them, as you mentioned, to the Salafi extremist Wahhabi in Saudi Arabia. And unless this is tackled, I'm afraid to say ISIS, Qaeda, and others would keep coming. I mean, Qaeda ended, now ISIS, who knows in the next decade what would happen.
I would request everybody at N in front of ISIS. N means no, they are not Islamic.
This is why we say change coming from people. Let's all together, at least now, we being in Canada, try to help by the means we can. And I mean, the Mennonite Center, EQUAR, getting here, doing this conversation is a way of opening this dialogue and saying, how can we help? Maybe we could have another one question before closing.
Yes, that would be very good.
Okay. Yeah.
Several people have it.
So, sorry, who is the, okay, please.
Sorry, I think this question is for, I didn't get your name, but the lady in green.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. You talked about the project for the New American Century. And as an undergraduate student in the States about 15 years ago, I remember a congressman in the States.
Could you speak up?
Congressman in the state of Virginia by the name James Moran, basically saying the war in Iraq is basically being propped by the neocons. Of all the neocons, 23 of them are Jews. And you just talked about Richard Perel, there's Wolfowitz, there's David Fromm, and all this, right? So, right now what I have is, probably I can just distribute to everybody here about the World Zionist Organization wrote in 2003, Europe is becoming a Muslim continent. So what I'm worried is, with the new refugees, because even General Wesley Clark talked about the 7 countries that have been invaded, including Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Iraq, and all this. I mean, he's on YouTube because that's a general in the United States. What I'm worried is when these refugees get to either Canada or the United States, that the project that was planned in 2003 basically says, let's recruit retired CIAs, retired FBIs, so that they can create this harmony between the communities and have clashes. And just this week we were saying basically on the New Year's Eve, German women were raped just because North African Muslims and refugees went there. And I think this is a part of the plan because of making communities clash. Because Germany was one of the countries that basically accepted 1 million Muslims.
Well, I mean, I personally don't, there's nothing that I really think they're not capable of doing. So you just never know, right? But I only heard the first part of your question, but it's, okay, let me just say this. I think this is the most important thing. That an atmosphere in which people are depoliticized is the most dangerous atmosphere, in which people feel that they have no stake in changing the society, that they can't change the society, that they don't have discussion, that there aren't the vehicles for people to discuss what's going on, to deliberate, to think about it, to exchange opinions. And so that I think is the thing that we can do, which will form a bulwark against all the disinformation, whether the disinformation takes the form of, just propaganda, or whether it's actually acts of terror which are carried out, by the security forces in order to divide people, in order to create fear. I mean, you always have to wonder when these things happen, because the minute they happen, it's like they've already written the law to deal with it, to now launch another attack on the people. So the bulwark against that, it doesn't sound big and exciting in that way, but doing this kind of thing I think is very important. And my proposal should be that we should regularize it and do it frequently and have, keep on having discussion on a broad range of things, because we need to really fight the depoliticizing of the society so people don't feel isolated. To me, that's the conditions under which they can act. As far as, whether they were Jews or not and all that, I mean, their aims are territorial, their aims are to have markets, their aims are to export their capital, their aims are to control the resources, especially oil, and their aims are always still in terms of positioning themselves for a greater war. And that's, you can see how they've been encircling Russia. Syria is part of that, and it's a very, very dangerous situation that's developing, and we have to be, really aware of the need to really build the anti-war movement and really make sure that it continues to develop. Thank you.
We will have one more question because actually it's getting late, and then please feel free to ask us when the forum is. Please.
I don't know if there's any other people that have Turkish origins, but I'm a Turkish Canadian. On my way to become a Canadian citizen, I just took my citizenship test right before Christmas. But what I'm expecting from the Canadian government, and it's more than it's rather a comment rather than a question. But what I'm expecting from my new government when I become a Canadian citizen is consistency. So, and I think that touches with some of the things that you mentioned, I mean, towards Palestine, etc. If there are values that we hold, you know, dear to our heart here, we should support governments or people around the world, or make our support at least clear. It doesn't have to be through war, arms, etc. But be consistent in terms of, again, you know, what's going on in Saudi Arabia in that sense. They don't fit our values, so stop supporting them. Israel's apartheid behavior against the Palestinian people, we should stop supporting them. And same way, my government in Turkey, you know, in my home country, the government of Erdogan has serious ambition. So everything that you have discussed, there is the Turkish piece in there. I can assure you, there's about 50% of this country who vote for the Islamist Erdogan government, who truly believe in the Ottoman imperial dream.
It's hegemony.
They have serious disillusions that if Iraq is divided, that they'll be able to go and take Mosul and Kirkuk. Okay, they have serious illusions about you know, the Muslims and the Sunni Muslims, seeing them as the leaders now, and they're ready to take on and consider Turkey to be the new leader of the Muslims, etc. So there's serious illusions over there. That's why, I mean, one thing for Canada, I would again want Canada to be consistent, and then all the other Muslims around the world, don't feed that disillusion of the Islamist Turkish government as well, because some of the things that you have described with the Syrian refugees, this has literally been a true blackmail by the Turkish government. They are responsible for the sale of those fake life vests. They were fully capable of stopping some of those people basically getting on those dinghies, etc. But the Erdogan government has used this to blackmail the European governments right before the elections, etc. So again, please be consistent. Please support the values. Thank you.
Well, thank you one and all. I think we are done tonight, that we're quite able to have a chat around the table as we go, and hope to see you at the next forum. Hope to see you on the panel at the next forum. And away we go. Thank you.